This is the One Piece. Well, not at the moment. Currently it's in more like 7 pieces. But all one needs to do is get rid of that pesky red line and bam, this planet is a fine One Piece. Now here's how we make it happen. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam and for as long as I can remember, I have only existed in one piece, which is more than certain characters can say. For example, Shanks and Junkyard Shanks, who exist in a state of two-piece after their various arm-related incidents. Shanks had his bitten off by a rabid Lord of the Coast, and Kid had his bitten off by a rabid Shanks. Meanwhile, this rabid boy needs your pats. And luckily for everyone who subscribes to the channel as a result of this here video, our dog Flamingo will receive one pat. So be generous with your subscribe powers, because this good and or bad boy, depending on your perspective, certainly does deserve it. Here's a curious question though. Who was the first person to actually use the term One Piece? It's very often incorrectly attributed to world-renowned alcoholic and fan of hot pink shirts, Goldie Roger, and this is mostly because of the notorious wealth, fame, and power anime openings. For example, I always think of Roger's last words as, "I left everything I own in one piece." Because that's what he said in the 4Kids opening, which was my first experience of One Piece. That's very unfortunately seared into my mind brain. But it wasn't actually Roger who gave the treasure this name. In fact, in chapter 968, a soon-to-be delicious pot of Odin revealed that the world at large referred to everything Roger had gained as the One Piece. So in conclusion, we don't know exactly who it was, but it could have been another one of those situations where Big News Burb had a bit of a hand, or I suppose more accurately a wing, in constructing this One Piece narrative. You know, I just realized that Morgans has both hands and wings, which might explain a lot about why he can't fly. That and, you know, a bit too much junk in the old bird trunk. But however this came about, the One Piece is not a name given to the treasure by Roger. And I've always thought that the name One Piece itself is interesting. The idea of referring to all of the things that Roger gathered as one piece. It's just kind of counterintuitive, referring to many things as one thing just because those many things are near each other. At the same time though, it is a perfectly Japanese thing to do, because even the term One Piece has multiple potential meanings in Japanese. Whilst the title of the treasure, One Piece, is some simple stolen English, within this series it's often accompanied by a Japanese translation, which is Hitotsunagi no Daihiho, which means many things. I mean, not literally. I should say it can mean one of 3 things. The first is super simple. Hitotsunagi is literally a translation of describing something in one piece. Much like this devil fruit is in one piece, this poneglyph is in one piece, and this tombstone of Sabo that I had one of my artists make for reasons is also in one piece. They're all objects in one piece. And they're also all objects in one piece in one piece. However, the second potential reading of Hitotsunagi is much more interesting because it can be translated as the rope linking all men, a concept that is even embodied in the series logo, which is itself all linked by a single rope. And finally, we also have Hitotsunagi meaning one sea at peace, which I think is quite clever, using the homophone of peace and peace, but not through English. In essence though, what we have on our triple layer pirate cake is a literal object, a link between all of the peoples, and a singular sea doing some peace. And to me, a planet seems like a great fit for all 3 of those. It is a literal spherical object composed of rock, water, and birds. And living on this rock is a link between all people, and once the red line is removed, those people will be even more linked, and our 7 fragmented sea pieces will become one big slab of water, ideally in some form of peace, which will also incidentally create both the All Blue and at least one very happy chef. Quick note about the red line now. It's weird. The red line is the only continent in the One Piece world, and it's a strip of rock that circumnavigates the One Piece world, kind of like a decorative sash on a Miss Universe contestant. And on this sash lives a gaggle of ugly spacemen ruled over by 5 comparatively more attractive older men. Emphasis on the word comparatively. However, prior to them, our world strip was populated by an ancient race of Lunarians, and before Marijwa even existed, this was known as the Kingdom of Gods, which was a bit of a funky revelation, because prior to learning of Lunarians, it was quite a popular thought that the red line was artificially created by the world government using some sort of fruit-based power to split the planet up and make it easier to control. However, the red line does date back to more ancient times, potentially even all the way back to when pteranodons flooded the skies with their historically accurate hunting techniques. But also potentially not, because I do think that the red line is artificial regardless of when it was created. And it's because of the concept of All Blue, a quote, mythical sea that physically cannot exist with the red line in place. Someone made something for some reason. And for the past 1,000 years or so, we have been trying to tear it down. Now this dates back to the Void Century, to the time of a certain Joy Boy, the man who allegedly left the treasure at Laugh Tale, a treasure described by Kozuki Odin as quote, vast, which is a word that can apply to several several things. For example, the length of One Piece as a series is vast. The surface area of rolling Logan's neck shoulders are vast, and of course the entire planet can be classified as almost as vast as those shoulders. But during the Void Century is also when the ancient weapons were made, which is another one of those odd things. Generally, weapons equal bad because they do bad things, but these weapons were made by the Great Kingdom, who, at least in theory, are kind of our good guys maybe. And why would our maybe good guys make devastating world-ending weapons? Well, to do exactly what they say on the box and end the world as we know it. The second part's important there. These ancient weapons are divided rather conveniently into a land, air, and sea type of deal. Pluton holds domain over land destruction, Poseidon reigns supreme with sea slaying, and assumedly Uranus covers all of our sky-shattering needs. Why do we need all three? Well, maybe it's because there's a certain structure that happens to be present in all three. The red line extends all the way to the bottom of the seafloor, as well as all the way to the not bottom, by which I mean upwards, potentially piercing the white and even white sea sitting at Sky Island altitudes. Basically, it is a structure too big for any one weapon to handle. 3, on the other hand, well, that sounds somewhat more reasonable. And speaking of reasons, here's Madame Charlie. You may remember her as the half-sister of Arlong, whose name is Charlie because she's a Shiark. But in addition to this, she is also the predictress of all things, quite correctly foreseeing grand events such as the Great Age of Pirates, Whitebeard's death, and probably even Bucky becoming an emperor, after which point Charlie smashed her crystal ball from laughing far too hard. She's pretty alright at fortune-telling. However, according to the ability section on the One Piece wiki, Charlie's most important power is, as the proprietor of the Mermaid Cafe, she has complete control of the restaurant. Also, her birthday is September 9th, which she shares with fellow fortune fiend Basil Hawkins. But in chapter 610, Charlie made a startling discovery. I didn't intend to look, but I sensed something calamitous in him. I saw the future. I wish this prophecy would not come true. The human with the straw hat Luffy. He will bring ruin to Fishman Island. And again, Charlie's pretty good at the whole future thing, better than Hawkins is, that's for sure. So much so that Charlie has never actually been wrong. So even though it didn't happen during the Fishman Island arc, Luffy will be destroying this mermaid paradise at some stage, which I don't think is as bad as Charlie was making it out to be. This is more of a red herring, making us think that bad things will happen when this is in fact a good thing. The issue with Fishman Island is that it exists smack bang under the red line. So if we were to destroy the red line, then that would assumedly result in the destruction of Fishman Island as well. That's not really an issue though, because the whole arc of the Fishman race is, well, it's actually quite a literal arc, as eventually they're all just gonna hop aboard the Noah and go live up on the surface, just like Fish Queen insisted that they all wanted to do. And what Fish Queen wants, well, Fish Queen gets, except for life. She doesn't get that anymore. But also, this isn't the only convenient society in play here. The other location that would be destroyed by the red line ceasing to exist would be Marijois. However, we care even less about that than we do the prospect of mermaids being able to poop, because that is the stronghold of the bad dudes. So essentially, the only consequences of destroying the red line is the destruction of an island where no one wants to live, as well as the destruction of a city whose inhabitants no one wants to live. For everyone else, I would say it's a pretty sweet deal, and very much in keeping with Oda's themes of breaking down borders and opening up the world place. I should also note that after this traumatic prediction, Charlie smashed her crystal ball, put on the future sight equivalent of a nicotine patch, and went cold turkey on this whole scrying into the future thing. She still smokes though, which to be fair is a pretty difficult thing to do underwater. It's kind of a talent really. But Charlie's personal arc was about learning to trust Luffy rather than trusting her visions, which I think is questionable given that her visions have a 100% success rate, whilst Luffy is a man who once tried to 100% hydrate. And speaking of trusting in Luffy, why would he even do any of the things that we've suggested here? The most endearing thing about our own personal Joy Boy is that he's not a big picture thinker. Sure, the destruction of the red line seems essential to us because we're invested in the world and the things. Luffy, however, is not. Luffy is invested in meat and friendship and Soga coin, on the advice of Usopp, who I should stress is not a financial advisor. And the only reason why Luffy bought so many Soga coin is because he was promised that it would take him to the moon, which is conveniently the one place where you would realize what the One Piece is. My biggest hope for the series is that the crew does eventually travel to the moon. Or perhaps many moons, because there are many. Perhaps even Laugh-Tale is a moon and there's just a sign pointing to the One Piece planet saying, "This is the One Piece, lol," which tells us exactly what we need to do. Destroy the red line to create One Piece. Which is also why Roger and friends of Roger were too early, because at least one of our ancient weapons did not exist, as King Neptune had yet to spread his merseed. How does all of this relate to Luffy though? What is the thought that makes him go, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall"? Which is a statement that works because one of the 5 Elder Stars is actually modeled on Mikhail Gorbachev. But the reason why Luffy does this is really the same reason why he does anything, which is to be free. The Pirate King is the person who has the most freedom, and this big red wall is seriously cramping and restricting said freedom. Imagine being able to sail to anywhere from anywhere. 7 separate seas become one piece, where Luffy can travel and, more importantly, eat anywhere he wants without needing to worry about the stupid red wall thing. That's really all the motivation Luffy would need to quite literally change the world. And plus, we do know Luffy's general preferences when it comes to obstacles. Nami says go over it, Usopp says go under it, but Luffy almost always says nah mate and elects simply to go through it. Destroying the red line really is the most Luffy possible solution to this problem. A very selfish maneuver designed to benefit his stomach, but one which would incidentally create a one piece that is a single object now connecting all people on one sea in peace. Meanwhile, I'm going to connect you to another video because it's also about fictional pirates. It's probably really good, I think, and I look forward to seeing you there.